Coming to the contributions of Chester Irving Barnard, there are three ideas which are very important as contributions to administrative theory. The first one is about acceptance theory of authority. The second one is his conception of functions of the executive. And the third important contribution of him is his concept of zone of indifference. And fourthly, perhaps, we can also mention his theory of communication. We shall take up these four one by one. Now, coming to the acceptance theory of authority, Chester Barnard said, contrary to the earlier notions of authority as the command of the superior, authority is vested with the superior. Authority vests with the higher reaches of hierarchy. The boss gives orders, and therefore authority is the command of the superior. This was the earlier notion. Chester Barnard disputed this. Authority is not manifest just by somebody giving orders. Authority is manifest, authority becomes real only when the subordinate accepts the order and complies with it. So therefore, Barnard says the location of authority, the locale of authority is not the boss but the subordinate. And for this, let me combine the fourth point, which is theory of communication. Barnard says that communication is very important in administrative organizations. There is a theory of communication in Chester Barnard's writings, in his book, Functions of the Executive. Communication is the bloodstream of administration or management. Without communication, administration does not function. For Barnard, accepted communication is authority. And he is conveying the idea that all communications, there are of course different kinds of communications between individuals within the organization. There may be formal communications, informal communications, but formal or informal, if the communication meets with acceptance, then authority is real, authority is there. So therefore, to put it in the form of a formula, we can say that communication plus acceptance is equal to authority. Let me just repeat. Communication plus acceptance is authority. Communication minus acceptance is not authority. And says, what is the basis of acceptance? Under what circumstances a subordinate would accept the superior's communication? He lays down four conditions for authority to manifest, for communication to meet with the acceptance of the subordinates. Condition number one, the communication must be intelligible. The communication must be understood by the subordinate in the same way as the superior wants him to understand. There should be one-to-one between the superior's communication and the subordinate's perception of that communication. And there are many occasions when what superiors ask, the subordinates may not follow because of various reasons. Because of our colonial hangover and continuance of English as a major official language in our country, the communication takes place in English, and the higher levels of bureaucracy are comfortable with English. Their orders and their communications are mostly in this particular language. But the subordinate bureaucracy may not be very comfortable with that, and there are chances that they would not understand this. And in a pluralistic society like ours, multilingual society like ours, there are so many languages. And one language is not guaranteed that there will be perfect communication between two people speaking the same language because of the dialect variations. It's said that in our country, every district has its own particular idioms, particular usage of the words. Each district, the language is changing. So if that being the case, I think one communication will not get the acceptance of all because they will not understand the same communication in the same way all across. So this is the first condition. The second important condition, assume that the subordinate understands the order. He has the sufficient command over language. Okay, this test is passed, but what next? The next important thing is he should have the ability to implement what is asked by, what the superior is asking him to do. He should have the ability. The ability is of two kinds, the mental ability and the physical ability. The physical ability is the locomotive ability to have the energy levels and things to do. And the mental ability is ability to understand, follow the communication in true spirit, and to implement the commands of the superior in the way he would expect him to do. So it requires certain mental ability also. Sometimes the communication fails. The communication may not meet with acceptance because the fellow is unable to physically comply with that or mentally comply with that. Okay, the second test is also passed. The subordinates has the mental and physical ability. The third important condition for communication to be accepted as authority is it should not go against organizational interest. What Barnard says is that every employee of the organization, when he joins, he thinks that he has to promote the interests of the organization. And if there is an order, even it is given by superior, which is against his assumption that he is supposed to promote the organizational interest, but the boss is saying something to negate this, the subordinate will be in doubt. He may not be willingly doing that. So this is the third condition. And even if this is there, maybe the communication is such that it is not against the organizational interest, or somehow the subordinate is convinced that even if it is against the organizational interest, he has to do it because of a very exacting boss. But there is the fourth condition, and the most important of all these conditions, which is it should not go against the personal interest. The fellow always have a personal interest, and the behavioralism is talking that the ideals of administration, you give orders without botheration of the individual interests. After all, every employee has individual interest, and you have to take care of that. So this theory not only is laying down conditions for communication to be effective, but it is also showing limits of authority. Authority has to be used in such a way that people care for these things. And if they see these things, the authority can really manifest itself, and the communication may turn out into a valid authority. Now, the next important thing is conceptualization of the functions of the executive. I think as students of public administration were already aware of POSDCORB, POSDCORB, which is a formulation of Luther Gulick, one of the classical thinkers. Luther Gulick has given a formulation of functions of the executive, or functions of the officers, to put in our own language. What all officers are doing, whether it is in public administration or private administration. Luther Gulick made a conceptualization. He says they do these 7 kind of activities: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. These are the functions of executive. Now, the behavioralists, more particularly Chester Barnard, has given a altogether different formulation of executive functions. He says the functions of executives are not these, they are different. Number 1, he has to establish the purposes of the organization. The first and most important function of an organization's chief executive is formulate the purposes of organization. What is the central purpose of the organization? Unfortunately, in most of the organizations, the central purpose is not known. Nowadays, in business management, there is a development called strategic management, where every organization, business organization, is mentioning the vision and mission, wherein they are articulating the central purposes. And that is also coming into under the Right to Information Act. The government organizations are also expected these days by the government of India to formulate such things. Any citizen is entitled to know what is the mission and vision of the office. Now there is an attempt to do this. But the time when Barnard was writing, it was all assumed that everybody knows the purpose of the organization. There is no need to formulate one. But he said that's very important. The second important thing is the purpose of organization is establishing a system of communication. Communication to Chester Barnard is a very, very important function of administration. The administrator's success will be measured by his ability to communicate. And he said communication should be continuous. Communication should be understood. The channels of communication should be direct as possible. And communication is very important in organizations, and that will improve the efficiency of the organization. He also stressed upon the importance of informal communication. The next important function of organization is the organization is viewed by him as a cooperative effort. He says that an organization is necessary because of the limitations of the individuals. No single individual can accomplish all the objectives of the organization. Therefore, there is a need for organization. Organization is a body of human beings with some specific relations. Cooperation is the basis for its continuation. If in the organization there is no cooperation, organization will become disorganization. And it also says that all human beings have their limitations. So organization is meant to mutually complement each other's limitations. The synergy will be such that it will ensure the accomplishment of the objectives. Yet another important contribution of Chester Barnard is his concept of contribution, satisfaction, equilibrium. He views the relationship between an employee and an administrative organization as a twofold relationship. One is the employee is contributing to the organization. So this is from the employee side. And the organization is also contributing, and its contribution is known as satisfaction. Barnard says that there should be equilibrium. What it means is, if the contribution is more and satisfaction is less, satisfaction subsumes all kinds of things like salary, perks, treatment, recognition, all kinds of things. An employee's satisfaction, or what the organization does for the employee, must be such that it is in equal proportion to what the contribution he makes. So there will be enduring relationship between individual and the organization if there is contribution, satisfaction, equilibrium. If this equilibrium gets disturbed, say for example, the individual is making more contributions than what satisfaction is getting, this will not be sustainable relationship. He is contributing more, and a time will come, he will think that I am doing more, but without getting much. So he will snap his relation, he will move out, or he will become casual. He will, may not be performing at the level he would be performing otherwise. Similarly, he is getting more satisfaction than what he is contributing. Organization will go out of existence. Either the individual goes out or organization goes. So there is a delicate balance between contribution and satisfaction. So all administrators should be aware of this, and they should figure out all the formal contributions, informal contributions, all the formal satisfactions and informal satisfaction. Somewhere they should strike a balance and ensure that there is an equilibrium maintained, and therefore it goes on. Well, this is one major thinker.